Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So we'll start off with just a couple of things from Katee Sackhoff's interview as far as new and interesting hints and whatnot. So they were asking her about questions that she often gets, and one, of course, has to do with the fact that The Mandalorian Season 3 certainly kind of turned into the Bo-Katan show, and it was very much a redemption arc, as she noted in the story, and as we've talked about here over the course of the podcast. But she also said, just wait. That was emphasized very clearly, and that this is all leading up to something, and she says the fans are going to be very excited. However she decided to deliver that, the writer interpreted that as putting that in italics. So very excited about what is going to be coming next, whether that's just Mandalorian Season 4 or whether she's talking about the Ahsoka series and everything coming after. Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the implication, quite honestly. There's no indication that she's going to be in the series just yet, but she's been on set. She got to visit. Whether that means it was more than just a visit, we'll see, but it does kind of make sense that she would somehow play a little bit of a part in it, I would think. But the bigger story of the two stories that we're going to be talking about today is the interview with Kathleen Kennedy that they did. And it starts off with a line about Star Wars being away from cinema and it being rather a long stretch because it's been since 2019 and The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, this is not a long stretch, right? It was 16 years between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace, and it was, what, 10 years between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens? So yeah, we're not that long of a stretch at this point. Like, talk to me when we get to 2029. If we still don't have a Star Wars movie yet, then yeah, we're in trouble at that point. Long absence. That was the phrase they used in the article, the writer, not Kathleen Kennedy. So yeah, but Kathleen Kennedy, to her credit, said, I'm going to tell you the truth, or I'm going to be honest, that the movies, the way they're thinking about them is that they're going to be made on the timetable that they need to be made on, and they're going to be released on the timetable that they need to be released on. And it sounds like they're not really going to try and force things into the pre-scheduled delivery windows that the fine folks at Disney have put out there, and so maybe we're not looking at December 2025 after all. But yeah, wouldn't it be nice still? They're potentially still on track for it, possibly. There's a bit about how the Rise of Skywalker 15 years later movie that has Daisy Ridley coming back as Rey was in the hands of Stephen Knight, who was supposed to be delivering a script, quote, in May, unquote, according to the article. Well, yeah, one wonders whether Stephen was able to finish that before the writer's strike began, or whether Stephen's actually even part of the WGA, being a British person, might be part of the WGA, but I went looking for any indication of that and can't seem to find any. That being said, as we've talked about on the monthly check-in episodes about where we're at in Star Wars storytelling, they are still on a timeline where they could make a December 2025 movie release date, because The Force Awakens didn't have its script finished until January of 2014. So that means that we've got until January of 2024 at the latest. So there's definitely still time to get this worked out. And speaking of that movie, we got a little bit more in the way of detail. I don't think we knew exactly all of this. The First Order has fallen, according to the article, and I suppose that's not really a surprise. The Jedi are in chaos. That's the line that we're given in this article, in this interview, which was kind of a new concept to me. And it also goes on to say that it's not really known how many of them exist anymore. So it kind of suggests the idea that maybe something got going already and then fell apart again in the 15 years in between The Rise of Skywalker and whenever, this movie is taking place. And so then you have Rey building a new Jedi Order based on text that she was given and that Luke imparted on her. That's, again, the language in the article, which probably refers to all the sacred Jedi texts that she spirited out of the tree on Ahch-To before she took off and before Yoda called down the lightning on it. And that movie is the future movie, as it were, as opposed to the present movie, which is the way that the Dave Filoni movie is described. And then, of course, there's the James Mangold movie that takes place at the dawn of the Jedi. And according to Kathleen Kennedy, they were talking with James Mangold about that before they were even talking about him directing Indiana Jones 5, which is crazy. But the thing I want to flag for you is the fact that the sort of big idea about these three movies, the way they're connected, is the idea of the evolution of the Jedi. And so that is another situation where, as you know, I mentioned yesterday on the podcast, the possibility that maybe Luke Skywalker could be a part of the big climactic event that's going to happen with Dave Filoni's movie. Well, this seems to be another piece in that puzzle, because how could this possibly be about the evolution of the Jedi if you didn't have any Jedi in that movie? So, you know, obviously Grogu potentially, and Ahsoka, whose title of Jedi is still, I guess, a little bit of a question per se, since she's walked away from the Order. So, you know, is she really a quote-unquote Jedi, or just a powerful, unaffiliated light side Force user? And then, you know, of course, we have Luke Skywalker, who is working on building his Jedi temple, and who knows who he's already gathered around him aside from Ahsoka checking in at this point. And the other thing I want to flag for you is that Kathleen Kennedy also name-checked 3 particular film projects and 1 series as well. As far as Rian Johnson's trilogy goes, she again reiterated that she talks to Rian Johnson all the time, and that his success is only making things push further and further out, because he's got so much on his plate right now, and still something that they want to do someday. And she also said that Rogue Squadron, the movie by Patty Jenkins, is still on the docket, and they just want it to be great. Same with whatever Taika Waititi is working on, and she said he's not going to be mad that I'm saying he's slow, but he's slow. They have 2 acts and they need a 3rd act out of him, so he's just not quite there yet. And the series that they talked about was the Lando series, which is supposed to be starring Donald Glover as well. That's never really been made as a formal announcement, but it's always been like, yeah, you know, when Donald's ready, we'll do it. So I guess it's as close to a formal yes, Donald Glover is attached to this thing as you'd possibly get. So those are the things I thought worth highlighting for you out of Empire Magazine's Summer 2023 issue with regard to the Kathleen Kennedy article and the Katee Sackhoff article, and that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.